My friends, today we have nearly 30 minutes of legendary, untold tales from the speedrunning world, which include, frankly, absolutely useless speedrunning lore from the deepest depths of the realm, that I can guarantee you've never heard before, and almost certainly do not need to know. Don't say I didn't warn you, but judge for yourself. 3 stories so trite and unusual that, well, let's just get into it, shall we?
Here we go!
Here's a deep cut of speedrun lore that I've never heard anyone talk about before, which is surprising considering it's from early Ocarina of Time speedrunning, and the 2 main characters in this story include a well-known member of the early Twin Galaxies community, and a speedrunner who would later go on to be better known for other work in another internet community far disparate from that of speedrunning. So in the early days of Ocarina of Time speedrunning, well before the era of speedruns live, let alone speedrun.com, much of speedrunning was just kind of this chaotic void. Runs scrambled here and there with very few websites ranking consistent categories in an orderly manner, if at all. So even if you want to look up the fastest 100% or any percent speedrun, well, good luck. Such terms barely even existed yet, let alone a leaderboards to rank them neatly. Now, Ocarina of Time, due to its popularity, did have somewhat of a community and some early forums where discussion took place around speedrunning, which was a rarity, but it was still a fairly chaotic world with less structure than we see today. And you know, those early runs hosted on Speed Demos Archive, performed by Mike TSA Diamani, which have become pretty well known and notorious over the years. But this story is about a run much stranger. You see, there was a fella who wanted to see one very peculiar Ocarina of Time speedrun. A fella by the name of Robert Maruchek. And if that name rings a bell, it's because he was a longtime Twin Galaxies referee, and he wanted to see a very unusual type of run indeed. Not something that would be 100%, but close. You see, Robert had never been able to collect all 100 Skulltulas, nor complete the mask side quest in Ocarina of Time, and simply wanted to see a run doing both. Now, these are both part of a modern 100% speedrun, but back when Robert made this challenge in the year 2006, no one had really completed a 100% run yet, and the term wasn't that well defined, and certainly no one had completed an all masks and all Skulltulas run. Now at the time, Twin Galaxies was offering numerous cash bounties for various gaming achievements, and so Robert placed, believe it or not, a $100 bounty on this Masks and Skulltulas challenge, one of the earliest speedrun bounties perhaps. Such a thing would be a remarkable challenge to not only play out, but also to record and prove in any meaningful way, likely requiring the use of numerous VHS tapes, set to the lowest quality of recording, which could do about 6 hours at most. The run had some pretty funny and very Twin Galaxies-like rules, including not using Fedora's wind to skip the boat sequence in the Shadow Temple, likely one of few known skips in the game back then. One could imagine it would take a speedrunner with quite a scientifically and technologically inclined mind in order to put together all the pieces that would not only play out such a Masks and Skulltulas run, but record it and send it off to Robert to claim the bounty as well. So you may ask yourself, who was this runner who completed this remarkable and rare speedrun? Well, if any of my viewers cross paths with the SCP community, then you might be familiar with the name Sam Hughes, or Quantum, QNTM. Indeed, while he's now much better known as an author of novels and entries in the SCP community, including the novel There Is No Anti-Memetics Division, Quantum was, once upon a time, involved in speedrunning, and the history books indeed show that he was the one who claimed this $100 bounty from Robert Maruchek for beating Ocarina of Time while completing the Masks training sequence and collecting all 100 Skulltulas. Now, using any Skulltula duplication glitch was also banned, and so Quantum really did have to go into all the areas and dungeons and get them all, thus playing similarly to how a 100% speedrun might have been played at the time. And the mask sequence is another thing that one will do in a modern 100% run. Unfortunately, it seems no video exists online of this obscure speedrun today. It was probably never digitized by Robert Maruchek. If the video somehow does ever get dug up, I would love to see it. but presumably the VHS tapes did exist at some point and were viewed and verified, imagine in a private Twin Galaxies referee room by Robert Maruchek himself. Now, Quantum was very good at documenting many things he found interesting on the internet, as well as his gaming achievements. He was almost a sort of early content creator in the gaming realm of the internet, so it's no surprise that he did document his process to a large extent, and we can still find a page about it on the Wayback Machine on his website, in which Sam writes, "How my run went. Having begun planning very early in 2005, taking a break to study for my college finals and graduate, and continued planning and procrastinating through the summer, my run was finally made on December 13th, 2005. It was a marathon session. I was getting very tired and hungry towards the end. There were pauses where I had to use the lavatory and plenty of mistakes, although thankfully I never actually forgot a Skulltula and was forced to return to collect at the end, as I had done in both my trial runs, nor did I die. I did get revived by a red fairy in the fire temple when I was trying to be clever and beat it without putting on the fire tunic, but that was me being cocky, and luckily it doesn't count against me. I'd hoped to beat the 7-hour mark, but eventually it took over 8 hours. I used 3 different 240-minute tapes, 4-hour tapes, divided up as follows. Tape 1, roughly 3 hours 50 minutes. Paused to switch tapes at the first blue fire point in the ice cavern. Tape 2, roughly 3 hours 35 minutes. Paused to switch tapes right after defeating Twin Rova. Time elapsed, roughly 7 hours 25 minutes. Tape 3, roughly 52 minutes up to the final blow against Ganon. Time elapsed, roughly 8 hours 17 minutes. Of course, I was playing on a PAL N64 version of Ocarina of Time, which is well established as running at 5/6 as fast as a regular NTSC copy or a GameCube copy. My time of roughly 8 hours 17 minutes translates to roughly 6 hours 54 minutes in real money or NTSC equivalent. Under 7 hours, but still rather longer than I'd hoped it would be. It remains to be seen what the official Twin Galaxies word on my time is. My tapes have been sent in well before the due date, in case you're worried. I still have yet to receive confirmation that they arrived, though. As for money, nope. Update. As of March 8th, 2006, I've had an email from Rob confirming that I scooped the Ocarina of Time bounty. Yay! Still no word on what my final time was and no money forthcoming, despite the payment date being January 31st, 2006. According to the forums, Rob can be up to a year late with bounty payments, which is kind of lousy when you think about it. Update 2, it's now October 18th, 2008, and I have finally received a check from Rob for the sum of this bounty. Wow, only 2.5 years late. Nice going, Twin Galaxies. Now that is all truly remarkable and quite a blend of worlds, and certainly quite an unusual chapter in speedrun history. Do you know of any other people who speedran in the past and went on to have more successful public careers in other fields? I mean, I suppose aside from YouTube and Twitch streaming and whatnot, but All that being said, I would love to see another Masks and Skulltulas run, perhaps a revival of this ancient and pretty arbitrary category, maybe one with glitches and one without. Will anyone ever complete such a run again? Only time will tell. As a side note, there are actually a couple of other crazy stories that I crossed paths with involving Quantum over the ages, including this thread on the Elite Forum from 2006, in which one of his articles was discussed live on air by Rush Limbaugh to millions of listeners. The article was about how to destroy the Earth, and was where I first learned about all sorts of interesting apocalyptic and futuristic phenomenon, like Van Neumann machines and Dyson spheres back in 2006. I'll probably tell that story another time. And hey, if you liked that story, be sure to give this video a like, my friends. Subscribe if you're not. I rarely ask for these things, but I'm pumping out the content here in December and this winter, so you'll be sure to tune in and enjoy many of these unusual and obscure speedrun tales. Here's something I'm sure you've never pondered before. Can you tell me the difference between these two games? Quest for Camelot on Game Boy Color and GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. Well, okay, the games couldn't be more different. One is this 2D sort of top-down Zelda knockoff type of thing, and the other is, GoldenEye, a defining first-person shooter of the era. So really they couldn't be more different, or could they? In fact, they actually share quite a few notable similarities, and this is getting somewhere, believe me. Both games are adaptations of 90s films. Quest for Camelot was even nominated for an Academy Award, Best Original Song, The Prayer, performed by Celine Dion and Andrea Bocelli. A truly great song, in all honesty. GoldenEye, on the other hand, was not nominated for any Academy Awards. Not that it matters all that much, but I'm just illustrating a point. Both films were supposed to be blockbusters of their era, but one main difference is that Quest for Camelot flopped, failing to surpass its budget with box office sales. Meanwhile, GoldenEye was a massive success, being one of the highest grossing films of 1995, the year of its release. Owing to box office success, GoldenEye 007, the game, was given more time to be fleshed out and mastered by its developers, since it was no longer seen as a sort of promotional carrier for the film, but rather an adjacent piece of media and fandom. On the other hand, owing to box office failure, the Quest for Camelot game was originally planned for N64, but this was scrapped, and the game lingered only on Gameboy, where it's mostly been forgotten since, derelicting away into the ocean of obscure 90s video games. But I was scrolling one night on the Nintendo Switch Online library and came across Quest for Camelot one night, and it sent me down a rabbit hole. A small rabbit hole, but a rabbit hole nonetheless. Like, what is it with this game? What does it mean, if anything? Has anyone ever speedrun this game? The answer is yes. Apparently it's not a very good game. That's not surprising, given it was just given a Game Boy release of a planned N64 game that went awry. Here's what the Wikipedia article's reception section says about Quest for Camelot. The game was met with some negative reception, as Game Rankings gave it a score of 50%. Adam Cleveland of IGN summarized the game as bad. He described its core mechanics as boring, walking between points and looking for objects. Cleveland noted Titus's reputation for games of poor quality, especially games with licensed content. He criticized the repetitive music and said the only decent part of the game was its use of color. All Games' Joe Ottoson criticized how gem collectibles were needed in order to save the game progress. He added that the gameplay was tedious and the menus poorly designed. You know, there are some other Game Boy versions of N64 games like Perfect Dark or The World Is Not Enough, which are certainly very strange, and I suppose Quest for Camelot would be no different. Yet in a world of billions of people, surely at least one person played this game as a child, perhaps because it was one of few games they owned, and revisited it thanks to increased interest in speedrunning over the years. And that speedrunner is a fella by the name of Burfometh. When I first went down this rabbit hole about a year ago, Burfometh was the only person to have ever submitted a speedrun of Quest for Camelot to speedrun.com, and presumably the only person to ever speedrun the game, or maybe even think about it in this capacity. Not only this, but he also performed the run at a gaming marathon, and recorded a 100% showcase tutorial for his YouTube channel in case anyone else ever pondered picking up the game later. His 100% speedrun of the game has about 2,500 views, so there are at least a few thousand people who have remembered this game from their past, searched up a speedrun, and checked it out. But that's just a few thousand, compared to the thousands of people who actually have speedrun GoldenEye and attempted world records to some extent, and the millions more who have watched speedrunning content about the game, and the millions upon millions who played it at some point as a kid in multiplayer or what have you. And the difference is just so intriguing to me. You know, in a slightly different world, maybe if the movie was a bit better, Quest for Camelot would have had a more robust speedrunning scene, and it truly makes me ponder. You know, you think about all the characters, the drama, the incidents, the world records, our GoldenEye history, the wide breadth of lore, it's just all truly insane. And Quest for Camelot, another game from a similar era, also made after a movie, just has close to zero lore. One guy has played it, one guy has speedrun it, done it well, contributed a good amount of effort to it, but that's it. It makes me ponder the sort of lost potential that could have been. You know, imagine if Quest for Camelot did come out on N64 and was a comparably good game to, you know, an adventure game, maybe not quite Ocarina of Time, but better than Quest 64 or Aiden Chronicles. And imagine a fair speedrunning scene sprung forth from that, with tons of drama and characters and all that good stuff. And I just kind of lament this lost potential of what could have been. And it hit me hard when I saw Quest for Camelot on the Nintendo Switch online games list, looked it up, and quickly learned the entirety of the game's speedrun history in only a matter of a few minutes and pondering. I first came across this lore more than a year ago, and just now revisiting it while writing the script, I found that there has been one new speedrun submitted on speedrun.com of this game. A new any percent run, in fact faster than that of Berfometh, by a runner named Shawnee. His run comment reads in part, "This was played on the Switch 2 platform. I could not select it at submission on the run on here. Proof of reset and console are before the timestamp as well. I learned this game for an alphabet challenge for myself, but after the initial stream, I really wanted to poke at it a bit more before moving on and ended up pushing down the time a lot. Though I had to do an offline run, I was unable to stream and focus on the finer stuff in the run rather than the chat, thus why no microphone. But I learned a few things from the any percent run on the leaderboard." So there are some other details as well, and I'm sure in a speed game with more competition, depth, lore, and frankly more people who care, there would be robust debate on whether or not a run done on the Switch 2 online version should be ranked on the same leaderboard as the original Game Boy played runs of Berfometh. But I suppose having any other runs submitted by any measure is good enough. And the fact that Shawnee chose this game for an alphabet challenge, learning a speed game that starts with every letter of the alphabet, naturally the letter Q has fewer games to choose from, which is probably how Shawnee ended up here. Not because it was a beloved childhood game in his case, but just by a sort of anomaly of language. Whatever the case may be, this is just one game in an endless ocean of others that has seen virtually no speedrunning scene throughout its history. Something that is deeply, deeply fascinating to me, especially when I could write lifetimes upon lifetimes of tomes simply about the history of GoldenEye 007 speedrunning, for example. The lost potential of these games causes me some emotion that I can't even really describe, like a mix of melancholy, nostalgia, deep thought, and a pull into a black hole-like ocean-deep matrix of what could have been. Will this segment in this video inspire someone else to play and speedrun Quest for Camelot? Who knows? But until then, this was certainly a bit of speedrun lore you didn't need to know. The "I'd really prefer if you'd be quiet" incident is one of the most infamous moments in speedrunning history, a moment which I'm sure everyone already knows. But to sum it up in one sentence, it's a moment where speedrunner Chibi is present on the couch for a run of Tomba 2 at SGDQ 2014, played by Caveman. They have zero synergy together and almost immediately get into a passive-aggressive bickering war, leading to the call-out for "I'd really prefer if you'd be quiet."
So confirmed, Santa's #1 helper is a squirrel.
I would really prefer if you would be quiet. But yes, you are correct.
But something no one has ever really discussed is how this all happened to begin with. Like, how did Chibi get on the couch anyways? Doesn't the runner usually get to pick those who will be on the couch with them? How was this disaster set in motion? Well, for that, we must go back to a handful of runs at this event, to one of the Super Nintendo game, Bubsy, Claws Encounters of the Third Kind, played by none other than a fella named Graviton. So here's the thing you might not know about these sorts of runs. While being on the couch and providing commentary is certainly a cool thing to do, for some lesser known games with smaller communities, you might not really have a group of people able to do this. In some cases, the runner himself might be the only person present who is able to provide any insight on the game. In this case, you can just hope to fill the couch with some friends and others who might provide some charming and funny commentary here and there. But what if the run is so early in the morning that none of your friends are awake, or if you just don't have many friends at the event? And what if it's the birthday of a fella named Chibi who asks if, as a birthday present, he can sit in on your run of Bubsy, Claws Encounters of the Third Kind? Well, that was the exact situation that Graviton found himself in on that fateful morning at SGDQ 2014. Bubsy went off on that fateful day, June 25, 2014, at 8:38 local time, which may sound like a normal time for some of you, but for gamers at a convention, this is the equivalent of taking place in the dead of the night. Might as well be 3 a.m. or midnight or whatever time most normal folks are well and asleep. And so when Chibi asked Graviton if he could sit in on the couch for his Bubsy run, who was Graviton to argue? He didn't really have anyone else planned anyways. That Bubsy run went off mostly without a hitch, with Grav pleasantly and quickly beating this cute little game. But more importantly, it gave Chibi the presence, both of mind and physically, to sit in on other couches, just by virtue of being early in the morning, away from the primetime show of the stream, and with no one really being around to kick him off. Well, the following run was a game of Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel by OmniGamer, with a handful of what we call SDA old boys, or well-established members of the Speed Demos archive community, providing couch commentary. Even so, Chibi was able to just keep sitting on the couch, even with a microphone to chime in now and then. The next run was a game of El Viento, played by Spine Shark. Somehow, even GDQ founder Mike Uama is sitting in on this run. Chibi has vanished off screen, perhaps not wanting to sit in on the founder's couch commentary, but he certainly had gained the confidence, like a man walking into a building with a clipboard and lanyard, to be in a place where he may not exactly have been invited. And so after this, the next run being Tomba 2, played by Caveman, well, Chibi was in the right place at the right time to just keep on sitting there and joining the couch commentary. Caveman's Tomba run would end up starting exactly 69 minutes after the Bubsy run, which was the run that had set all these events into motion. And with few others around at this early hour of 9:47 a.m., Chibi had gained full presence of mind to simply suggest that he had been sitting on the couch all morning, dutifully providing pleasant couch commentary. And who was Caveman to refuse? Yet with no rehearsal, no synergy, and Caveman feeling like Chibi was stealing his moment in the sun, the tension immediately started rising before culminating in that epic moment.
So confirmed, Santa's #1 helper is a squirrel.
I would really prefer if you would be quiet.
And all this certainly would not have happened if Graviton had simply not been in the right place at the right time to just shrug his shoulders and say sure to Chibi's birthday present request of sitting on the couch for his run of Bubsy Claused Encounters of the Furred Kind. Oh, how the history of speedrunning may have been so different. So there were 3 useless stories of speedrunning lore that you definitely did not need to know. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to the Patreon supporters and channel members for all of your support this year. Stay true, my friends, and I will see you in the next stream, video, or fireside.